What's happening, guys? Aruj again, and today we're talking about energy flow in an ecosystem. So let's get into this. Today we're going to cover autotrophs and heterotrophs, the flow of energy, and finally biomagnification. So a little bit of vocab. An autotroph is an organism that basically can create its own nutrition. So for example, plants and algae, they're able to photosynthesize. They're able to take energy from the sun, and all of our energy originates from the sun. We learned about this in photosynthesis. So these organisms are able to trap energy in the bonds of glucose. Real quick on these words right here, auto, that prefix auto means self, and troph, anytime you hear that suffix troph, that's referring to food or nutrition. So an autotroph makes their own food or nutrition. In this case, it's glucose. Now, you and I, individuals, we are called heterotrophs or consumers. Consumers aren't able to produce nutrition through photosynthesis. Instead, we have to eat them, okay? So again, hetero means different or other. So we have to consume other organisms. And again, troph means food or nutrition. So herbivores, carnivores, omnivores, they have to eat other organisms in order to obtain energy. Plants, on the other hand, they're autotrophs or producers. They're able to produce their own food. And next, we're going to hear this word quite a bit, trophic level. Trophic level means a place on a food model. And again, troph or trophic is referring to food, nutrition, or energy. So, the first food model that I want to show you is a food chain. Now, again, all of our energy comes from the sun. This energy is trapped in plants. We're always going to have plants as the main producer for an ecosystem, okay? So in this case, energy is trapped in this corn. This arrow on the food model is showing where the energy is going. So I like to think of it as the energy is going into the mouth of the locust. The energy is stored in this bug and the locust, and that's going to go to the mouth of the lizard, and the energy has been transferred. The energy in the lizard is going to be stored, and when this gets eaten by the snake, the energy is going to go into the mouth of the snake. Okay, again, the arrow shows where the energy is going. The very first level we see on a food model is always called a producer. The organism that eats the producer is always called a primary consumer. Primary means first. So this is the first consumer, okay? Obviously, the next organism that eats the primary consumer is the secondary consumer, meaning second. And this word right here, tertiary means third. So the snake is the third consumer. The lizard was the second, the locust was the first, and the maize, or the corn, is the producer. Okay, it's what made or stored that energy. Now, energy doesn't flow like this so perfectly in an ecosystem. It actually looks more like this. Okay, it's way more dynamic. So again, this is a food web, and if you notice, we have two producers. We have berries and a plantain. Every single energy model or every single food model is always going to start with plants or some sort of producer as the primary level. So these are my primary producers. Okay. Now, where is the energy going? Well, the energy can go to the fly, it could go to the butterfly, it could go to the warbler or the grasshopper. Okay. Those would be my primary consumers in this food web. On the other hand, this is another producer. The energy in this producer could go to the grasshopper, the rabbit, or the mouse. Okay. So we always have our producers. The primary consumers are always going to be herbivores. Okay, I should have said that back here. The primary consumer is always going to be a herbivore, something that eats plants. Okay. I would like for you guys to make a little sketch of this. You guys don't have to draw the actual images. You can just write the words. Okay, you can just write the words. But again, keep in mind, the arrows show where the energy is going. A food web is a linear model, meaning a straight line. A food chain is a linear model, whereas a food web is way more dynamic. Essentially, a food web is several food chains, is several of these put together in an ecosystem, okay? Now let's look at how much energy actually gets transferred. So again, we have our producers. Well, I'll just tell you right now, each level that consumes, so this is one trophic level, this is another trophic level. Each level that consumes something, only 10% of that energy gets moved up. So for example, our producers, they're 100% of our stored energy. Okay, we get our energy from the sun. That energy gets stored into the primary producers. That's 100% of what's available to us because we're consumers. As we go up the food chain to the primary consumers, only 10% of that energy goes up. Okay? As we go up to the secondary consumers, the next trophic level, only 10% of this available 10 is available. That leaves us with 1%. And as we go up, so this is the primary, that's the secondary, the tertiary consumer, 1/10 of 1% is 0.1. And this is tertiary consumer, meaning third level or third consumer. This last level right here, this is called a quaternary, meaning fourth level. That's only 1/10 of 0.1, leaving us with 0.01. Only 0.01% of the energy is available at the quaternary level. Okay? Because as we go up, as energy transfers, only about 10% moves upward. Okay? Now, why is that important? Well, keep in mind, 10%, the rule of 10, only 10% goes up. Take note of this real quick. This word is biomagnification. Biomagnification is an increase in toxins as a result of eating organisms that had a smaller concentration. So, here's what all this means. In the 1970s and earlier, there was a pesticide used called DDT, DDT toxin. Well, DDT, this pesticide that was used up until the 1970s, was leached into the water systems. So, in the aquatic ecosystems, you had plankton. Well, plankton would obtain small amount, very, very small amount of DDT. Well, in the ecosystem, the plankton would get eaten by smaller fish. Well, each fish is going to eat several plankton. Keep in mind, as we talked about in the energy pyramid, only 10% of energy goes upward. However, with DDT, 100% of DDT transferred upward. So each of these smaller fish, we'll just say they had 3 molecules of DDT. Well, these smaller fish get eaten by larger fish, and those larger fish are going to accumulate, or that concentration of DDT is going to biomagnify upward. So they're going to have even more concentration of DDT. And finally, the tertiary consumer, in this case was the eagle would swoop down and eat these fish. The eagle accumulated lots and lots of DDT. Well, how did that affect the population of the eagle? That toxin eventually interfered with the calcification of their eggs when they laid eggs. So their offspring were dying because the shell wasn't protecting the offspring. So this increased the danger of the population of eagles. Well, luckily, legislation, laws were passed, and we no longer use DDT. Okay, but this is why these concepts are important, because things like this could affect ecosystems and populations. Okay, that is it for today. I do want you guys to copy this slide, the food web, food chain, into your notes and the vocab. And I will talk to you guys later. Adios.